Pardon the outbound, but I'm Will already. Did you know that two-word subject lines get the most replies? Now, today I'm joined by Nate Nasrallah, the founder of Fluent, and a fantastic follow on LinkedIn if you're not following him, master of the mid-funnel, but today we're going to be going through a cold email. So Nate, without further ado, let's jump into this email.
So we've got subject line, hiring progress. Hey Will, my team is officially an approved hiring partner for your company. Saw your open cyber roles. Would love to learn more about your upcoming initiatives/team. From an inter-company perspective, we are currently supporting a customer support org but my side of the house specializes in technology talent services. Is there a good day we could connect? First thing that I kind of want to dig in here, Nate, is the subject line. I've got my point of view on this, but I would love to hear your perspective on hiring progress as a subject line to kick off this email.
So I think we'll start out on a high note. This was actually the bright spot of the email for me. Like it wasn't hateful. There could have been a subject line that was like, improve hiring progress by 25% or something like that. That, you talk a lot about kind of like the mental spam filter, like that would be an immediate trigger. Hiring progress kind of fits along with what I would like email my co-founder. Hiring progress. Hey, John, how's it coming? So yeah, I'll say this was, this passes for me. This is all right.
Yeah, it's like just vague enough that I don't have any opinion one way or the other, which is actually how I tell teams to write their subject lines, right? To your point, it feels internal. Like it doesn't have the Nate comma, want to speed up hiring by 4x vibe that makes me want to kind of vomit. So to me, this is the right way to approach it. Let's dig into the first two lines, because obviously that's the next thing that someone's going to read. I am not a fan of this start, but Nate, what's your perspective as it gets going?
Yeah, so I agree. I think we go downhill here for sure. I think we start rolling downhill with as soon as you're talking about my team, and I kind of read this as not necessarily the company name there, but they're approved to integrate with some type of hiring platform. They're inserting some social proof or something in here. And it just kind of comes across a little more self-focused for me. And then the other pieces, so on the second line, saw your open cyber roles, would love to learn more. Those two things are conflicting for me. It's did you do some research or didn't you? Because you're asking me for info, but you saw the cyber role, so did you read it at all? What do you need from me here? So we start to kind of snowball and we go downhill a little bit.
Yeah, and that's where it fell really flat for me is in that third sentence there. But that first sentence, I know what they were trying to do, right? They're trying to pre-handle the objection of we don't talk to new vendors because they haven't been approved. It's too much of a hassle. It's too much of a burden. But what you thought you were doing and how it comes across are often very different. And so this comes in with this hey, we're finally approved, and the person doesn't have context behind that, right? Why should I care about that, right? It makes me doubt that there even is an open cyber role in the first place because of that lack of research showcasing in the second line.
And I'll just say real quick, your point around the context, I assume this is the opening one. You don't have a full thread to fall back on as additional context.
Yeah, and it gets to a larger point, which is part 3 I wanted to get into, the overall personalization of this entire message. So if I'm looking at this message, we're talking about the open cyber roles, but we also have this really helpful context of the fact that we already work with the customer support org. So that thing that they were trying to accomplish in the first line, they already checked the box, and they could have done that sooner with better context, and it would have opened up a better overall conversation.
So for me, and I kind of read this a little differently in they were selling you, Will, at Lavender talent solutions to hire for a cyber role at Lavender. So with thinking about it from that perspective, I was okay, this definitely doesn't pass the weird test, meaning it would be so weird to send this to another company because it's just so personalized. So to do that, I'm okay, what's going on at Lavender? And one of the realities is you would have to try really hard not to notice that you guys, 1, hit a Series A, and 2, hired an incredible team. And so if you're not weaving that into, and again, if you're my prospect, Will at Lavender, like I'm definitely going to reference that. And that also means that it's so personalized, I couldn't recycle this for another account.
Yeah. By the way, love the weird test, right? One of the things that like stands out to me if you're trying to create the weird test is what's in the job role. Like, what are you actually hiring for, and get specific. Like, if it's there and there's a nuance to it, or there's something that you can call out, like that seems like that would create the impetus for said weird test. Now, I think you're right, Nate, in that like one, the context is there. They are trying to sell me. I think there's like a secondary context, which is they've already sold someone else within the organization, which is kind of an interesting angle to it. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk on, we're working our way from top to bottom, right? The ask. You already know how I feel about it. I can see it on your face. So I'm curious, like, how would you approach this ask a little bit differently, or would you approach it the way you approach it?
I would, in classic Lavender fashion, a little bit more unsure tones. Like, this is very assumptive of like, well, clearly you're interested, so when's a good day? And I would flip that, and I would just ask for interest instead. I wouldn't assume it.
To me, it was like, it's so assumptive, but it's also like, if I ask you, Nate, like, hey, are you open next week for 15 minutes, to talk about this very specific thing? You're going to think to yourself, like, I have no idea what's on my calendar on next Tuesday at like around 2 p.m. And so it's like, it's so much work on you to actually answer this question. I feel like that, as well as the assumptive nature of it, it's just going to keep you from getting a response.
Agreed. Very much agree.
All right, let's walk through our rewrites. So, Nate, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'll go first because, again, I kind of took this from the perspective of, okay, you are the prospect. Yeah. You just posted a job role at Lavender. And so to your point, like, you can be way more specific about the actual job description. So like, let's say you're hiring for a lead architect. So hiring an architect with enterprise security chops can't be easy, Will. So I'm stacking my research all the way up front, and then I'm kind of changing the order. I don't know what the data would suggest, but I like kind of throwing the first name not all the way up front, putting it further down. And then what I'm doing is I'm continuing to start to build some type of logical bridge that connects and shares context for why I'm reaching out back to some of the business priorities. So, and again, Will, you're a non-technical founder. You're not Casey, you're technical founder. So I have to come at it from a different perspective with you. And so I'd say, I'm guessing making the right hire fast is a need after your Series A. Usually that means you're selling larger deals with tougher security audits. And then I'm transitioning into a question to set up what we do. How's your candidate pool looking? And I threw the word today in there. I kind of went back and forth thinking like maybe this creates a little bit more like time-bound urgency. Like today, how does it look? If it looks a bit light and nobody fits just right, we may be able to help. So those are those unsure tones in there. I just saw the opportunity for a little rhyme in there, and I was kind of like smiling to myself, so I kept it in there. And then, thanks, I continued on, and I kind of took a look at, okay, who in Lavender's orbit would make for some really good social proof, and you want to try to match that up to who you're reaching out with. So I picked Clary, and I was like, we've filled 16 architect roles in the last 30 days for teams like Clary. Does it make sense to share more, potentially with Casey? And so here on the CTA, one, I'm asking for the interest, and I'm aligning it with what I know about the account. Is like, okay, Casey's probably the hiring manager here, but if I need to break into the account, maybe through a different approach or angle, let me reach out to Will and again align my ask with what I know about the account and Will's kind of role within it. So there's my rewrite.
I love it. The way you did those first two sentences is just like fantastic writing, by the way. You're using like words like chops, how you like separated a word like fast within commas. It creates like visual emphasis on it. I thought that was like so well done. The other thing that like stands out to me, and this is more like I'm nitpicking on like the data, is the double question. So the way I would add the question about Casey is I might do a PS instead, just because I'm coming in with like, I know PS, particularly on a personalized email, is going to get you about 35% more replies, but only about 5% of emails are going to use it. And so you can take that second question and be like, P.S. Let me know if Casey's a better person for this.
Oh, there you go. I like
Yeah.
it. I like it. Leverage the PS strategically.
But Nate, man, you're a poet, man. I love that. I love that. If it looks a bit light and nobody's right, that's so good. All right, let me throw mine by you and see if it resonates just as well, because that was fantastic. So rewriting, I actually use the same subject line. I liked yours, so I would actually maybe adopt yours going forward. But so I used the hiring progress, and then I said, Will, your customer support org uses us to help with hiring. Just trying to set some clear credibility from the start. I saw you're hiring for cyber roles. A couple analyst roles stood out, so I'm getting specific. Back to that, like going deeper into showcasing my research. Have you had success filling those roles yet? So similar to you, I kind of asked that imperative question of like, is the role actually still open or is it not? Because if the role's closed, then it's obviously not a priority and it won't get a response. So I can at least get them to reply to correct me. Looks like there's a couple nuances in what you're looking for. In the case of writing this email, I'd probably point out particularly there's a technology that you want somebody to have experience with. Happy to jump in to help. And so just like kind of leave it open and let them reply to that single question. But to your point on that call for Casey, I would probably include that as a PS if I was going to rewrite this now that I've seen yours. No, I'm cheating. And I'd probably be like, PS, let me know if Casey's a better person to chat about this with.
I dig it. So can I go through a couple things that stuck out here?
Yeah, please. Rip it up.
Well, more so first, I love the brevity. I was trying to shrink mine down a little bit. It was 75-ish words. And you have this way of saying the same thing, but half the words. And so pulling it up on a phone, I could probably see the whole thing without really scrolling if I'm on a larger screen. And I like that. That's key. What also stuck out is there's no specific, call it product language. We do this. We do it in this way. You use the fact that you're already working with the customer support org to do the talking for you. And I think that's really interesting because if you look at most cold emails, there's going to be some type of product language. This is what we do in there. And I agree with the point to make it a little more weird. You could reference something like a specific thing within the tech stack is wow, you guys are building in .NET? Man, that's got to be pretty tough. Nobody's doing that anymore, right? So you can kind of up the weird factor
I only
a bit.
I only know one person that's doing that. Robert McClellan, the burn rate.
Okay, there you go. See, Robert is a very special, particular kind of guy then.
Well, Nate, man, I appreciate you jumping on for this one. This was fun. I loved your rewrite.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. I was going through some will withdrawals after our sessions last year, so it was super fun to jump in and do this.
And by the way, if you're listening to this and you haven't checked that out, on the Lavender YouTube page, we did a 3-part series on mid-funnel emails, and Nate provided a pure masterclass on exactly how to write everything from post-discovery call emails to after the demo to what you need to do when you're negotiating. So I would be sure to check that out. It's